Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 212. That is the 212th trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight series here at PR from the Heart as part of our summer reading celebration. We hope that all of you are continuing to not only enjoy your summer, but your summer reading season. But for all dads out there, for all fathers, grandfathers, stepfathers, fathers-to-be, fathers-in-waiting, all father figures out there, this episode, amongst the past several that we have been able to share with you, is specifically for yourself. You know, as we like to say here at PR from the Heart in the Children's Book Spotlight series, being a dad is one of the most important responsibilities that you have when you're walking this earthly plane. You can't call in sick, even though if there's a day that you might not necessarily feel that you're at your tip-top, so to speak. And fathers really have a big responsibility, now more than ever before, especially when it comes to helping our children know their inherent worth and their inherent value. Now, you might be wondering, well, in the midst of all of the busyness and the chaos and the stressors of the world, sometimes we're barely able to, as men, as fathers, take care of ourselves. Leave it to a brand new children's book to help us not only remind our children to see the inherent worth and value in themselves, but to see the inherent worth and value within us as men, within us as fathers. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review for I'm Proud of You, which is the book that we are now proudly featuring here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Craig Melvin, who's going to be joining us momentarily, is by leaving a 5-star review on Amazon to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. You can also head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's and or independent bookstore. As we like to say, they are the pillars of our community. If they do not stock their copies of I Am Proud of You, be sure to give a little tip of the cap, so to speak. Let them know that you heard about I'm Proud of You on the Children's Book Spotlight series and give that kind recommendation. Let them know that they should stock I'm Proud of You, because it's important that we celebrate fathers not only on Father's Day, but each and every day thereafter. The trolley is going to be racking up some mileage, but we're heading on over to one of our favorite parts of the country, just right outside of New York City. The trolley travels across the country from San Diego all the way to the beautiful state of Connecticut, just right outside of New York City. You see him each and every day on the third hour of the Today Show, and he is spending some quality time with us here in our neighborhood. Joining us here is now proud new children's author, in addition to NBC anchor and Today Show host, Craig Melvin. Craig, we appreciate the free time joining myself and my little Shih Tzu Maltese, my faithful furry friend and companion, little Forrest. Happy Father's Day to you and to your family, and congratulations on the success of your book.
John, thank you so much. That was a fantastic introduction. I'm honored to be with you from the heart. That is from the heart. I am honored to be here.
Well, we're all about the heart, hence PR from the heart. A little bit of housekeeping before we continue on. Of course, if you're fully loving the vibe between Craig and I, you're fully loving the Father's Day vibe. Well, also one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Craig and also for us here at PR from the Heart in the Children's Book Spotlight series. Subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Join the more than 15,000 members of the PR from the Heart family, our proud YouTube subscribers, and share this very special trolley stop leading into Father's Day weekend and beyond on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. Craig, we always love to focus on, there's always two origin stories for a children's book spotlight series episode. There's the origin story of the author and the origin story of the book. Now, of course, many people, if they watch television, they're familiar with the Today Show or they watch it regularly. They're faithful and loyal viewers. So people obviously see you each and every day, but they may not necessarily be sure about where it all began for you. Could you share with us where things really began for you and when you knew that a large part of your purpose was meant to be of service, not only to children, but also to parents and to families, and to just really be of service to the world? Was it a specific moment in time, or was it a series of events for you?
That's a good question, actually. I don't think there was a moment. I think that for me, I've been richly blessed for a long time. So my family has always believed in the adage, to whom much is given, much is required. And so as God's blessings have become more abundant, I feel even more of an obligation to contribute in myriad ways. I think that I'm surrounded by a lot of people who believe the same way, and so that's sort of what drives. But my mom was always generous with her time and with her spirit, and so I think it probably comes from that. But it's nice to be able to try to pass that part on to our two children as well. We're trying to rear generous children who are empathetic. That's one of the hallmarks of our family in this house. To the first part of your question, though, Jay, I would probably say it started for me professionally when I was, oh gosh, I think I was either 15 or 16. I can't recall, but I was watching a commercial on television one day after school, and they were holding auditions down at the local mall. They were looking for reporters, high school reporters that would work with the producer at the NBC affiliate in Columbia, South Carolina, where I'm from. And you'd work with this producer, and you would create these stories that were of a particular interest to young people. If you got selected, and you'd have like one story every month or two. And I went down to the mall, hopped in my dad's '73 Pontiac Le Mans, and I auditioned, and lo and behold, I got picked. And I walked into the newsroom, and I was a teenager, and I saw all of these people that I had grown up watching. And I caught the bug pretty quickly. Just the energy of the newsroom, this idea that you could make a living by asking questions and telling stories. The whole thing it spoke to me quickly. And I did it when I was in high school. And then when I went off to college, I studied government. My college didn't offer a journalism program. I studied government and tried to get a campus TV station off the ground while I was there. And when I graduated from college, I took a job at the same local TV station where I was a high school reporter, an Our Generation reporter. That's what we were called back then. But I took this job, and I started out as a photographer and became a producer, and just sort of worked my way up, and stayed there at that same station until I was 27, 28 maybe. And that's when I got a call from New York.
Things very much, one of the things that you really stand out in your work in television because you're very intentional. You're very intentional with your questions. You really care. And in the world of TV, there's a lot of vanity. There's a lot of ego. You've probably seen that up close, firsthand, and personal, so to speak. But I'm a firm believer that good things happen to good people. And just take a look at how you've flourished and grown, over the past 20 plus years. It's incredible to see. Now, on that same note, when people tune in and they watch the third hour of the Today Show, they could say, Craig Melvin has it made in the shade. He has he has the golden toilet, so everything goes right for him. Now, undoubtedly, on one's journey, there's challenges, difficulties, obstacles, problems, stressors, troubles, worries, you name it. Specifically speaking, whether it be cracking into the television industry, we're going to talk more about the book momentarily. When you knew that you wanted to write the book, what are some of the specific notable challenges that you faced along your journey? What were some of the things that helped you to get through to the other side of those?
That's a great question too. I think that for me, it was really hard early on in my career because I was working in my hometown, and so I was trying to break into this business surrounded by friends and family. And so there were frequently distractions. I started anchoring an evening newscast when I was 23 years old, which was really cool in so many ways, again, because in part it was my hometown and my grandma could watch me every night. But I hadn't really grown up yet in a lot of ways. And so here I am doing the evening news, and I would go out on a Friday or Saturday night, as one does when you're 23, with your buddies, and I would party like a 23-year-old. And so I had some maturing to do that I didn't I didn't fully appreciate that at the time. I do now. I also, I worked hard and I played hard, but I came of age. This would have been, let's see, early 2000s. This is before we started talking about mental health and an appropriate work-life balance. So, John, I would work, I'd pull 16-hour days at least 2 or 3 days a week and thought nothing of it. And I was, 20 pounds heavier. I was always working. I was either working or hanging out in bars. That was it. That was it. So there was no balance. I got older and started to understand that you can't live in the extremes. And so that was hard for me. And I think if I'd probably been in another industry or been a bit older when I started achieving some professional success, I probably would have gotten that. That was hard. I think a lot of folks in television also suffer from imposter syndrome. I was not immune to that. There were many times where I looked around and I kind of wondered if I'd belonged. And so that kind of messes with you for a while. And I also, again, to be clear to your point, I want to preface it by saying I readily admit I live a pretty good life now. It's, America's morning news show, and I love the job. But it took a lot of sacrifice to get there, to get here. And by that, I mean, I didn't have a meaningful relationship with a woman until, gosh, I was probably 30, maybe early 30s. And I lost a number of friends because there came a point in my career, probably in my mid-20s, where I was so focused on just getting better at what I was doing and so focused on taking advantage of every opportunity that friendships were not as important as they should have been. I was working 6 days a week for, the better part of 4 years, 5 years. And even when I moved to Washington, D.C., before I came to the network, I was doing the same thing for a while. And so did it work out for me? You could make the argument that it did. Was I occasionally anxious and depressed in my 20s and 30s? Absolutely. And I think that's probably one reason I do appreciate the life that I have now so very much.
I commend you for your vulnerability, Craig, and for not only being vulnerable, but being comfortable and sharing that with us here on the program. When I had the opportunity to read your book, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in a moment here, I can really feel on a visceral level how connected you are with your emotions and feelings. And as men, right, kind of the older paradigm is chalk it up, stuff it down, numb it out, whatever the case might be.
Sure.
This will lead into the origin story of your book, but in terms of a transitional question, how important was it for you, and you being not only a man, but being a prominent celebrity figure as well, too, to say, okay, especially for all men, for all dads out there, we really need to be with our stuff, our emotions and our feelings, no matter how uncomfortable or messy things may feel or be.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I really try to display, if you will, for both of my children, but especially my son, is it's okay to cry. And it's okay, not just okay to talk about how you feel, it's expected. And no one has a good day every day. And so, we prioritize dinner as a family most nights if I'm not traveling. And we always talk about that. We talk about, and when my wife and I talk about our days, we make sure to point out something that didn't go our way, something that didn't go as expected, and also how that made us feel. I think fortunately as a society, we've evolved in this regard. But I remember growing up not ever knowing how my parents felt. Well, scratch that. If they were upset or disappointed or angry, I knew that. But I didn't grow up hearing, I'm proud of you a lot. I think as parents, we are obviously, we're duty bound to love our children. Every parent loves their children. We sometimes express it in different ways. We have different love languages. But growing up, my parents' love language wasn't to emote. They didn't use their words to express their feelings. And so when I had children, it was very important to me to rear them in a household where emotional IQ was very important, paramount, if you will, because we know now as a society that when children, when they suppress their emotions, they become teenagers and adults who suppress their emotions. And nothing good comes from bottling everything up or pretending that everything is okay. Nothing good comes from that, in the long term, especially. And so that's always been part of the motivation. And I've also noticed that as men, when we talk about how we feel with other men start talking about it. And you create these communities where guys feel comfortable expressing themselves openly. And nothing but good can come from that. I was at my daughter's school a week or, was it? Yeah, it was last Friday, almost a week ago. And it was the end of the year ceremony in the class where they give you the certificate and they give you a memory book. And she goes up and she gets it from her teacher, Miss L. And she comes back and Sybil looks up at me and she's like, "Dad, are you crying again?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just, these are happy tears, sweet girl." I said to her that although now with the book, it's become a bit of a punchline. I said to her, I said, "Sweetie, I'm just so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you. It's first grade and I know the year was long, but you did so well. And I'm so proud." And so I think probably, John, what we also know as a society is sometimes we overcorrect. The pendulum swings from this extreme to the other. So I think if you talk to my children, they might tell you, Daddy expresses himself perhaps a little too much sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you may hear my little Shih Tzu Maltese, little Forrest. He whenever he communicates and he emotes and he barks, he's letting me know how he's feeling on his end of things. So it could be very easy for me to, tell him to pipe down when we're doing a recording here, little Forrest, but I'm doing my part. I'm not necessarily blessed to be an actual father of a human child yet. That'll happen when the time is right. But I wanted to be a dog dad. And so my little Shih Tzu Maltese came into my life 2 years ago. And so I make more of a conscious effort on my end to not only be with my emotions and feelings, which he tests me at times, but then also to be with his emotions and his feelings as well, too. And you thought that this was just going to be talking about a children's book. We're going fully deep here on the children's book spotlight series, but we are ready momentarily to crack the cover and dive into the pages of Craig Melvin's brand new children's book, I'm Proud of You. We've been teasing it. That's a media term, by the way. Again, we hope that you're enjoying episode number 212 of the children's book spotlight series as part of PR from the Heart's summer reading season. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Craig is by leaving a 5-star review on Amazon to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. And of course, as well, for all of the pillars of our community, local libraries, children's and independent bookstores, if you do not stock your copies of I'm Proud of You, we're making that kind recommendation here for you on the Children's Book Spotlight series to be able to stock your copies of I'm Proud of You, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Quill Tree Books and HarperKids, because again, every day is Father's Day, not just whatever it is, the third Sunday of the month of June, each and every year. The origin story of I'm Proud of You. Now, when I can just envision you're on the set of the Today Show and you see Hoda, children's author, Savannah, children's author. I believe Dylan also wrote a children's book, if I'm not mistaken, too, right? And
Al as well.
And Al as well. So it's kind of like you're looking around and it's like, I think it might be my time, so to speak. So in terms of, and this kind of leads into a two-part question, but the specific point in time when you knew that your book needed to be shared, was it a matter of seeing everyone else's book and saying, I want to be able to do this? Was it a matter of just, perfect and divine timing? And then how this transitions into the bond that you guys share at the Today Show. There's so many programs out there where it seems that the chemistry is manufactured or fake, and you guys have something very real and legit that's palpable that can be felt.
Thank you. And it's funny you bring the chemistry up because it's so not manufactured. I do think that we've had the benefit of time. I've worked with Chanel and Dylan for roughly a decade now. Savannah and Hoda now and I have worked together for 6-7 years as well. So that helps. It also helps that our children, all of our kids with the exception of Al, they are similarly aged. Like we all have children that are within 2 or 3 years of each other. And so a lot of the things that we talk about on the show between stories relate to our kids. Like this week, we've all been complaining about the sheer number of end of school activities that they all have. The end of school party, the end of school lunch. And so that's where I think a lot of the bond comes from. Plus, we genuinely respect each other. The origins of the book, I'd written a previous book called Pops. It was a lot heavier about this complicated relationship that I had with my dad and the struggles that many families in this country have with loved ones who are addicts. My dad suffered with addiction mightily for most of his life, various addictions, and so I wrote that first book as a love letter to him because he cleaned himself up, and I wanted to help other families who were similarly situated, and there are many that I discovered through the course of talking about that book. So after that book, the publisher, they wanted me to write another book, and I basically said I didn't have another one in me like that. And they said, well, have you ever thought about a children's book? I was like, well, I don't really fancy myself a children's book author. And then they continued to talk to me about hypothetically, if I did write one, what would I want it to be about? I said, well, I don't see a lot of children's books that are written from a father's perspective. It'd be nice to do something like that. And I do a series on the show called Dad's Got This, where we highlight fathers who are going above and beyond. And they said, well, what about something like that, where you tell a story about, your kid and your children, and just what if it's that simple? They're like, well, what would you even write about? I was like, well, there are all these little moments that both of my children have, and I find myself just marveling at really small things. And as they've gotten older, those small things evolve into larger things. So I was, really impressed the first time my son tied his shoe, because we'd worked on it for months. Then all of a sudden, years later, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It looks like he's demonstrating some empathy. I'm not rearing a little sociopath after all. So it goes from these little micro things to these macro things. And I wanted to create a book that captured all of that. And so we kept talking about it for months, and this was probably, almost 3 years ago now when we first started having these conversations. And that's kind of how it was born. It wasn't really an aha moment. I never really set out to write a children's book. I did want to, as I got into the process a bit more, I did start to realize that dads need to be celebrated, and we don't really do it as often as we probably should. But we also need to celebrate our children and make sure that they know, not just that we love you, because kids know that. They know that mom and dad, innately, kids know that. They know that their parents love them. They don't always hear that we're proud of them. And even when they do, why we're proud of them. So that was very important to not just say it, but to explain why it was that I was proud of my children.
I'm glad that you touched upon that thread, because it's very easy to excuse me, take the time to connect with our kids and say that we're proud of them when they did something great, which is obviously important.
Sure.
But you gently tackle when our kids make mistakes, when they fail, and even just, again, the depth of the emotion. Like, I've been in the world of children's literature for 10 years, doing PR publicity work for children's authors, and have been hosting this program for 6 years. The depth of emotion that I see in this book, and I feel it, as I mentioned, the term visceral level. I'm proud of the heart you have. You bring others close to you. I'm proud of your soul. You pull others up with you. I don't see a lot of this in terms of the connectivity to the visceral emotion a lot in the world of children's literature. You've got something here, Craig. And it's important, it's not to say that, there's going to be, a whole series of children's books from you, but I wouldn't put it past you, needless to say.
Man, I don't know about that.
One of the things that I really love about this book, especially as well, too, and we kind of touched upon it beforehand, is that, especially whether it be moms or dads, there's times where we can have unprocessed emotion, unhealed trauma. We're reparenting our own inner child while we're parenting our own kids. You've had the chance to tour across the country, talk to children, parents, families, senior citizens, and then some. What has been some of the heartfelt feedback that you've received, especially tying into that emotional, visceral level? How has your story been able to make an impact from what you've seen up close in person?
Yeah, that's a really good question, John. That actually has been pretty cool to actually get a chance to go to these various cities and talk about the book and have people ask questions and hearing their connection to the book. Because you know this, I mean, books are vehicles. They're vehicles to teach, they're vehicles to introduce the audience to unknown places, unknown characters, but they're also vehicles that can be used to connect, especially children's books. And so to hear parents talk about reading my book to their son or their daughter at night before they go to bed, and being able to weave in specific examples of why they're proud of their children and to use my book as sort of a launching pad. That actually wasn't something I had anticipated, but it was really awesome to hear people who, would stand in line and wait to get a signed copy. And as an aside, they would say, I bought the book and I read it to my 5-year-old. And, at the end, I told her, Stephanie, I'm really proud because you blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's exactly what I wanted to accomplish, to trigger conversations in families. And so to actually see it happen, that's pretty cool. That's actually, and not to sound whatever, but as someone who has been blessed to have numerous opportunities to do cool things and talk to cool people and go to awesome places, that's not something that I had ever experienced. Because the goal, as is to just try and you want to do good. Whether it's on a small scale or a large scale, most people just want to put some good into the world, and to actually be able to see the good and hear the good. It hasn't been lost on me.
And I'm glad that you're able to take the time to connect to that, because especially in the world of media, it's always go, 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 fast-paced breaking news. You take the time to be present. And you're one of the good dads out there that reminds our children that the best present, Present, is presence. Presence. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. You see him each and every day on the Today Show on NBC. Craig Melvin is joining us here as our featured guest on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We are fully enjoying his brand new children's book, I'm Proud of You, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Quill Tree Books, HarperKids. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. Be sure to leave a 5-star review if you feel called to do so. That's one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Craig to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's and or independent bookstore, remember they are the pillars of our community. If they do not stock their copies of I'm Proud of You, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about Craig Melvin's brand new children's book here in episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We always love to be able to provide useful information here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, especially for all parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators, that they can immediately extract from a Children's Book Spotlight series episode and implement it into their own lives, as well as the lives of the children that they're blessed to watch over, protect, love, nurture. And of course, you at the Today Show, you're always big on the tips, tools, and strategies. I love those segments on the Today Show, right? Specifically speaking, when it comes to those parents who are feeling overwhelmed, overstressed, even if it's just somewhat challenged, so to speak. Undoubtedly, there's parents out there, especially dads, that say, I want to connect more with my kids, but da-da-da-da. The beloved New York Times bestselling author, spiritual teacher Wayne Dyer would say that the da-da-da-da was the Morse code for our own inner talk. I'm not a good father. What if my child doesn't love me? I'm not worthy. I'm not loving. I can't be kind. What are some specific ways in which parents, especially fathers, can do their part to really move through their own emotional minutia and stories and really be able to connect with their kids, maybe on the deepest level that they've ever been able to experience before?
You're really good at this, by the way. I see why there have been 212 episodes, John. You ask,
Thank you.
You ask great questions. I do think that I have been lucky because a lot of the tools that I use as a dad are the same tools that I use as a journalist. I go out of my way to ask open-ended questions, not, how was your day? Because I know what I'm going to get from my son, especially. It's good. It's fine. It's okay. So instead of that, we've switched to what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? Was there a time today where you thought, gosh, this is great? Or so you get beneath the surface. If you can do that with your kids, you've achieved something. And by the way, this doesn't happen every day. There's some days where I get a lot, and there's some days I don't get as much as I want. But what I do is keep the conversation going. I'm constantly talking with my children, constantly, to the point where I know sometimes I'm annoying them, and that's fine. They can't leave the house, so they're stuck with me at this age. So I just annoy them. But there is an expectation, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, there is an expectation in this house that you are going to share your highs and your lows. That's what we taught. We call them highs and lows a lot. So that's one tool. Another tool that I have found that serves me well as a journalist and as a parent, I spend a lot of time listening. And the listening for me, it's all encompassing. I listen to their conversations that they have with their friends when I'm driving them around, because that tells me a lot about the things they find important, the things that they're finding interesting in that particular moment. I spend a lot of time eavesdropping on them when they don't think I'm listening. That helps me as a parent. And the third thing I would say, and this is, again, I think a lot of people find this uncomfortable. It's one of the things that has probably served me very well personally and professionally. I'm okay with silence. I don't feel compelled to fill silence. Those voids are good with me. And I use that with my children as well. Sometimes, my son or my daughter and I will just sit. We'll read sometimes out on the porch, or if we're watching a movie or something, we'll just sit. We'll just sit and not talk, and either watch something or if they're doing something, we'll just sit in silence. And I think that's healthy for them too, to understand that it's okay to be quiet, because oftentimes when I am quiet, that's when ideas come to me. That's whether it's a story idea or I find that when I'm quiet, that's oftentimes when I'm at my best. And so we're trying to teach them that.
I really appreciate you sharing all those, especially because, no matter wherever a parent is on their spectrum as of right now, they have the opportunity when the time is right to be able to implement the information that you just shared, not only into their child's lives, but their own lives as well, too. Undoubtedly, every day here when we are walking this earthly plane, as I like to say, we're still in school. Many people think that, when we're done with high school or we're done with college, that, school is done. And we learn each and every day. Life is a teacher. I'm curious to know, as one of my final questions for you, Craig, specifically speaking, what has your children's book, what has I'm Proud of You taught you about yourself and taught you about life?
That generational cycles can be broken. And by that I mean we can be motivated just as much by bad examples as good examples. And I did not have the kind of father that I wanted growing up. And now, of course, as I mentioned, he's above and beyond. But growing up, he wasn't physically present as much as I would have preferred, certainly not emotionally present at all. And so I knew pretty early on that if I ever had kids, I knew that I didn't want to be like my dad. And as cold as that may sound, it helped me. But it also demonstrated to me that it's unreasonable to expect people to be something they haven't seen. My dad didn't even know who his father was until he was 13. The first line in my first book was, my father was born in a prison in West Virginia, and we never talked about it until I sat down to write this book. And so for almost 30 years, I wanted him to be something he wasn't capable of being. And then you fast forward just one generation, and I'm not trying to brag or boast, but I think that one of the things I am proudest of about myself is that I did figure out early on that being a dad requires presence, physical presence, emotional presence, all of it. You got to be there. And when you are there, you notice these little things that you become proud of. And so that's the one thing that this book has taught me, that it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish, man. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all of it. People have asked, when I was talking about my first book, people would say, well, gosh, do you think that you would be where you are without your mom or your dad? And I'm like, it's not a dumb question, because obviously I wouldn't, but I do think that if my father had been this sort of Heathcliff Huxtable dad that I wanted when I was a kid, I don't think I would be where I am, because I spent so much of and I didn't do it knowingly, obviously, at the time, but for me growing up, a lot of time was spent trying to get my dad not just to notice me, but to approve of me, to tell me that he was proud of me. And so I went down to the mall to audition to be a reporter. I worked my butt off at the local TV station so he could see me every night. And again, it took some years of therapy to discover what I was actually probably trying to do. But had my dad been this doting father that I am, I think I probably would have been a little soft. And I don't think I would have tried as hard. I think I probably would have, been a lawyer or consultant or something like that, not disparaging those professions. But I think being motivated by what you don't want is probably even more powerful than being motivated by the positive.
I'm really loving the depth of what it is that you're sharing here, Craig, in the process. And as I mentioned in the PR from the Heart Green Room, we have a little surprise for you. And technically, there's 3 surprises. There's going to be 2 back-to-back surprises here. But the first one, I really hope, really touches your heart. So there's a dear friend of ours We call him a fellow neighbor for a reason. He's written a very special message, and we're going to be sharing it on screen for all of our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Dear Craig, as a father and grandfather, I'm proud of you for writing such a supportive, sensitive book and sharing your parenting insights. Your story encourages self-esteem and self-confidence in our kids, which our children need now more than ever before. I'm proud of you as a parenting manual for today's families. We have a daunting responsibility to prepare our children for their future. Thank you for your contribution to that responsibility and for keeping the memory and legacy of our favorite neighbor alive and well, while blazing your own trail of love and kindness. Mr. Rogers, who first wrote and sang the timeless song, I'm Proud of You, 53 years ago, is undoubtedly smiling on you, knowing that you're helping children remember how proud we are of them. Your friendly neighbor, David Newell, Mr. McFeely, from Mr. Rogers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. Like our generation, I grew up watching that show, and that's really special. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you saved it for the end, because now I'm such a much now. That was really sweet. Thank you so much, John.
You're welcome. David and I.
Send me a copy of that.
I shall. David Newell and I, we've been very fortunate together over the past 3 years. We co-host one of the most popular children's book review programs online for parents and educators called the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And he heard that I was going to be interviewing you, and he wanted me to be able to send that message from Pittsburgh out to you in the process. The two ways that we always close out every children's book spotlight series episode. This is, again, a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers, our favorite neighbor. In many ways, shapes, and forms, he reminded us of our inherent worth and our inherent value. And most notably, he did this not only on the neighborhood when he talked across the country, various talks, commencement speeches, but most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmy shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of saying, remember those people along the way that reminded us how proud they were of us and why it's important for us to be proud of ourselves. I know that you mentioned a few people along the way in terms of your family, your son, your daughter, your wife. Who are some of the other people that come to mind that you would specifically like to publicly recognize here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series that have helped love you, Craig Melvin, into being?
Oh, gosh. I mean, that would be such a long list, John. I had a lot of patient teachers, some who have since slipped away and are in heaven now. But, I would have to go back to Miss Dozier, my eighth grade math teacher, who, God bless, she had her hands full because I was terrible with math. Miss Dozier comes to mind, Miss Pack, Mr. Brandon, my third grade teacher, Mr. Fanning, my AP government teacher, who I did a story on when I was an Our Generation reporter. I did a story on him because he was my favorite teacher, and the story ended up winning an Associated Press award in the education reporting category, and it also helped me land my summer job at the TV station. My Uncle James, and a guy named Scott Johnson, who's my Key Club advisor, a guy named Larry Kearse. It's funny because as I'm rattling these names off, I realize I really did have such a remarkable village. Mr. Dixon, my Model United Nations and debate team coach. I had from a very young age a lot of people who became emotionally invested in my success, and I stand on their shoulders. My pastor, Reverend James and Reverend Jackson. I just had, it's, I'm glad you asked that question, because it does force me to think about all of those people who really pushed and prodded me, who were sort of on the train long before a lot of other folks hopped on board.
And paraphrasing Fred's words, it's long since been said that if those people are undoubtedly smiling on you, just like Mr. Rogers is, knowing the fact that whether if they're still, walking this earthly plane or they're shining down from heaven, they're knowing the positive impact that you're making on children, on parents, on families. And as we like to say, those who love great children's books here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. And the final way that we always close out every program, we're huge Disney buffs here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. There's something about the Disney magic because it always reminds us that we have the ability to bring to form and shape our dreams, our desires, our goals, our ambitions. We can fulfill our own wishes. And in turn and in kind, we can help to bring to form and shape the wishes, to fulfill the wishes of those that are in our lives. Family, our friends, our loved ones. We go back to the year 1992. We're about the same age. We remember the beloved Disney classic, Aladdin. We remember the late Robin Williams as well, too. We always, wherever we go, wherever the Children's Book Spotlight series goes, we have a little bit of a genie lamp here. Forrest knows what I'm talking about. We have a little segment called Free Wishes. You have freely given from your heart. Each and every day you deliver the news. You put smiles on the faces and the hearts of viewers to countless people across the country and around the world for that matter. So you're being given 3 wishes, Craig. Now, I feel that, again, that the only automatic disqualifiers, I believe, according to the genie of the lamp, you can't make someone fall in love with you and you can't ask for more wishes, but anything else is fair game. So these wishes, they can be for yourself, they can be for the family, they can be for the children of the world. What would your 3 wishes be?
I wish for my children to enjoy a lifetime of abundant peace and happiness. That's wish 1. Wish 2 would be for global peace and empathy, as cheesy as that may sound. And wish 3 would be, oh, wow, can't wish for more wishes. Wish 3 would be for everyone to, no, I can't say that. Wish 3, wow, this is fascinating. I've never really actually thought about this. What would my 3rd wish be?
You can always save it for a rainy day if that helps.
Boom. A wish to be named leader. Yes, that's what I would do. Thank you.
And it's long since been said that when your wishes come from your heart, they have a greater chance of coming true. Now, of course, many people, if you remember the beloved movie critic duo Siskel and Ebert, when they loved a movie, they gave it 2 thumbs up. Well, one of the fastest growing recommendations in the world of children's literature is when little Forrest, my pride and joy, my little faithful furry friend and companion, little Forrest gives 2 paws up. He is proudly giving up 2 paws.
Yes.
I'm proud of you. I think that probably the best noise that he likes besides the trolley, because we live right near the trolley here in San Diego. So he wants me to say that this is also his favorite little squeaky sound as well, too. We encourage all of you, again, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com. Be sure to leave your 5-star review for I'm Proud of You. That's one of the many ways, again, that you can pledge your support for Craig to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's and or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copies of I'm Proud of You, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, and keep the conversation going post Children's Book Spotlight series. If you haven't had the opportunities to do so, if these messages that we have shared here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, if they have lifted your spirits, if they've opened up your heart, if you're a father, if you say, now, John, as the result of listening to you and Craig, I know that this is going to be the best Father's Day ever, and I'm going to be the best father that I can be. Not only just for my kids, but also for myself and for future generations as well, too. We encourage you, if you haven't had the chance to do so, to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That has been episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. But when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. And as we see hands from many little ones on screen, as we like to say, that means mission accomplished, job well done. But fear not, there are many more magical trolley stops to come on forthcoming editions of the Children's Book Spotlight series, as sooner than we realize, we're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary celebration, being of service to children's authors across the country and around the world. Also celebrating the 6-year anniversary of the Children's Book Spotlight series, just a few trolley stops after that. So it is a perfect time to be able to join the PR from the Heart family in different ways. If you are a children's or middle grade author and would love to share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new children's book, just like Craig Melvin did here with I'm Proud of You in episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, if you would love to be a featured guest on the program that you're very much enjoying right now, we encourage you to head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Instagram, Facebook, X, all at PR from the Heart. Little tip of the cap to one of our favorite neighbors, David Newell. Man, it's such a great feeling to be able to connect people heart to heart. David shared a powerful, heartfelt share, his thoughts and reflections on Craig Melvin's I'm Proud of You. That's a perfect segue as David joins us each and every month. Again, you know him and you love him as Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell. For the past 3+ years, we have been proud, privileged, blessed, and honored to be able to have David join us each and every month as part of PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, one of the most popular children's book review programs for parents, caregivers, grandparents, and educators across the country and around the world. So if you are a children's author and would love for David and I to deliver a heartfelt review of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, you know where to connect with us. Via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms, all at PR from the Heart. As I mentioned previously, it's hard to believe we're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary, being of service to children's authors across the country and around the world. And so especially, we are doing our part to help as many children's authors as we possibly can to help their dreams come true, to fulfill their wishes. So if you are a children's author, if you would like to be able to create your own book media tour in your neighborhood or a national book media tour and crisscross the country, just like many members of the PR from the Heart family are doing right now, let us see how we can be of service to you. You can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com. You can schedule your courtesy connection call and let us again see how we can be of service to you for the back to school season, for the holiday season and beyond into 2025. Man, where is this time going? Once again, one final time, we also want to give a little tip of the cap to Craig Melvin for spending some of his quality time with us here in our neighborhood. I'm Proud of You. His brand new children's book is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Quill Tree Books, HarperKids. Again, you can head on over to Amazon.com. Be sure to leave a 5-star review if you feel called and guided to do so for I'm Proud of You. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, if they do not stock their copies of I'm Proud of You, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 212 of the Children's Books Spotlight series as well. So there are many, many more magical trolley stops to come. We're super excited for what lies beyond. Little Forrest had some special time with us here today. Craig had some special time with us here today. So we want to thank all of you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators across the country and around the world, such as Craig Melvin, who again are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books, for local libraries, children's and independent bookstores, truly the pillars of our community. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. One final time again, we have felt his presence quite a bit here on episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, just as we have since day one of this very program. In many ways, shapes, and forms, Mr. Rogers, our favorite neighbor, he reminded us not only of our inherent worth and value, which we mentioned a few moments ago, but also in many ways, shapes, and forms through his own natural weight. Did you know that Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds while he was walking this earthly plane? That was his reminder to us of how loved and how special that we are. Did you know that, again, he weighed 143 pounds? I'm still trying to grasp that still after all this time. there's one letter in I, there's 4 letters in love, and there's 3 letters in you. So as little Forrest was kind to spend some quality time with us here today, and as Craig was as well, we like to share our favorite 3 numbers. They are 2, 4, 3. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder to all of you, to not only all dads, to all grandfathers, to all stepfathers, to all fathers-to-be, fathers in waiting, to all father figures out there, to anyone who has a fatherly influence, and to all of us, to all of you, our fellow neighbors. We're reminding you of your inherent worth and your inherent value, that you are loved, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are. For Craig Melvin, for myself, John Masiulionis, and of course for little Forrest, my faithful furry friend and companion, we hope that you have enjoyed episode number 212 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.